G'day guys, Nick and Jack here from the Unaffected podcast. Today, we are chatting with one of my best mates, Josh Hayes, who was there the night of my accident. We explore the impact it had on him, seeing a good friend sustain a life-changing injury, as well as exploring the changing dynamic of our friendship following.
G'day guys, Jack from the Unaffected, and with me as always is the man with the deepest voice in Australia, Nick Dempsey. We are brought to you by Australia's best boutique care agency, Care Match Australia. Check them out on their socials, Facebook and Instagram for all your caring needs.
Yeah, g'day guys, I'm Nick. Thanks for coming back listening again. And today's episode will be a pretty special one for me, especially we're talking to one of my best mates, Josh Hayes. So Josh was there on the night of my accident at my 21st birthday party. For those that don't know what happened, I dove into a pool, hit the bottom and dislocated my neck and compressed my spinal cord. Gave me a spinal cord injury, so I'm now C4 quadriplegic, so limited movement of my arms, no movement of my lower body. And yeah, so Josh was there on that night in the moment when it all happened. Since the accident sort of carried on, still one of my best mates, has done a lot for me. So this will be a very interesting chat. So Josh, thanks for coming on.
No, much appreciated. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get into it.
So I think the best place to start is the night of Nick's party, Josh. Do you want to take us back and tell us a bit about what you remember about that night and where you were when Nick dove into the pool?
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously being Nick's 21st, we're having a pretty good time. Probably had a drink or two too many. But yeah, like things sort of got later into the night and everyone's sort of getting ready to go out. I think the plan was to go to Paddy's in Albury or something like that. So we're going to go out to a club. But then, I went inside to shower and get changed, get ready to go out. And I remember when I came out, the party was just so subdued, and I had no idea what had happened. I'd gone inside when everything was still sort of kicking up. And then, came outside and Chris came up to me and said, Nick's had an accident. And I was like, this is a stitch up. You guys this is just an elaborate joke. Then obviously a few times after that, Chris was like, no, seriously, he's had an accident. So then, just everyone sort of hung around until the ambulance got there, and then everyone sort of started moving away to sort of give Nick some space and give the family some space.
How were the days after for you? Because I know obviously I was pretty out of it. I didn't know what was going on back home or anything. Immediately after, did it take a while to sink in for you, or did you realise what had happened?
Honestly, I don't think it hit me fully for probably a couple of weeks. I remember we went back, I think the following day, me and Chris had to drive back to Newcastle. So it was sort of 8 hours in the car from Albury back to Newcastle. And we were sitting in the car and it didn't really wash over. We sent a message to our friends in Newcastle. So obviously Nick's, your people from water polo and that sort of thing, said, Nick's had an accident on his 21st. And pretty much without fail, everyone responded shit joke, that's a stitch up.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. We're like, fair enough. Neither of us really in the mindset to push the point, but in the days afterwards, I just remember going and sitting at work. I think I was working in an accounting firm at the time, and just honestly, I did nothing for a week. I just sat there staring at the screen, just waiting for updates. And in my head, I thought we were going to get updates quickly and everything will turn out fine. But sort of it started to sink in over the week that this was going to be a bit of a longer wait to know where everything stood. So, yeah.
On the night, I remember Cal, another one of my mates, saying that people thought I just sort of knocked myself out or something, or it was just a little injury. Because I think some of them even still went out to the club. They were like, "Oh, Nick's hurt his head. He won't come out. We'll just carry on. He'll be fine." Was that sort of what the message was going around, or was it? Did people?
Yeah,
know?
Yeah. Basically, I think like we all just assumed everything that was going on was precautionary. We're like, "Oh, ambulance is coming." It's just because like we were like, "Oh, he's probably got a few tingles up his arm. Like he'll sleep it off. It'll come good." But obviously, like I've played a lot of rugby, and we have like games stopped because people will, have a very minor sort of pain to do with their neck, and they come good. So I was just expecting like next day he'll bounce back up and he'll be pissed off that he didn't get to enjoy his 21st to the fullest, but it'll all be fine. But yeah, I think that was probably the general consensus too. Like I think most of the people there were like, "Oh, yeah, it'll all turn out okay."
Yeah, I guess your head doesn't go straight away to the negative. You try to make it positive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for sure.
In those weeks after when you're at work, staring into the space by the sounds of things, were you getting flashbacks, or were you taken back to that night and what you saw often?
Yeah, well, like obviously since I didn't see it, I don't think I had the same sort of like, I guess, like PTSD, I guess, that others might have had. Like I wasn't flashing back seeing, Nick jumping in a pool, but I definitely was, remembering the feeling of like coming down and your mates like laying on the ground, not able to move with, so many people surrounding him. It was it's just such a confronting image that you just never want to see one of your mates in. So yeah, that just kept playing over and over, without fail for probably the full week.
Yeah, for sure. I've luckily only experienced a few suspected neck injuries on the rugby field myself, and it's the silence like no other over the field. When you don't know the extent of those injuries. Pretty scary times.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I mean, in rugby, it doesn't matter if it's your teammate or someone on the opposing team that you don't even know. You feel horrible and you don't want to play, let alone when it's your best mate laying there. You just feel just the type of way that's pretty hard to describe unless you've sort of been there, I guess.
Absolutely. When you first heard that Nick had sustained a spinal cord injury, what were your first thoughts there? Were you familiar with SCI before that?
Not really. Like, sort of. Well, I listened to the first podcast you guys did with Nick talking about his accident. I probably had a similar reaction to Nick in that I was like, "Oh yeah, he'll be in a wheelchair, but like wheelchair basketball's achievable, and it'll just be a few modifications to his life, not such a not such a major change in that he'll just need to make sure that places have wheelchair access and that'll be about the extent of it." But then you obviously, like, once you hear that that's what someone and care about's going through, you obviously look into it, and it became pretty clear pretty quickly that that's not exactly how it works.
When people go through traumatic experiences, often they're so desperate for answers that they're going back and analysing everything, just looking for anything that can explain the outcome. And sometimes that leads to the people kind of thinking about things that they did on that night, or feeling almost that survivor guilt that you hear about. Have you ever thought back to that night and wish there was something that you'd done differently that in your mind you've kind of thought might have contributed to that outcome?
Yeah, like obviously, when you're thinking rationally, you probably you can put those thoughts away and be like, it's not something you can change. But I think definitely, like, I mean, me and Nick have spoken about this, but on that night after after the speeches, I think it was, I went and raided his old man's alcohol cabinet, and I found this like pretty flash bottle of Jack Daniels or something with a pretty heavy alcohol content, and like got Nick to drink basically a schooner's worth of it, and like I look back on that moment like just with so much regret, obviously, and I guess especially early on, I felt a lot of guilt about that because, you know, is that the drink that tipped him over the edge? Like that's obviously something you're going to be thinking, and but yeah, the survivor guilt was especially early on for me was definitely very prevalent.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, like you said, I know we've spoken about that. Felt like, yeah, if you hadn't given me that drink, that maybe then it wouldn't have happened. I said, oh well, you know, you didn't make me drink all the beers before that. You didn't, you know, force anything down my throat. It was my decision, which I've always actually thought as well about people who, say if you have a car accident where a drunk driver hits you and then that's your injury, you'd have a lot of anger in yourself with the other person, where I was almost comforting in the fact that my accident was my fault, because I don't have that anger with anyone else. It's sort of, you know, at peace within myself to know that, yeah, I don't have anyone else to blame, so it's fine. I was a dickhead and it happened and we move on.
And knowing you, I think that you would have found some alcohol on your own anyway.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I think like it also, I guess that, you know, speaks to you. What you're like, Nick, is that, you know, you'd rather just cop that as though, like, I mean, it'd be easy to look for someone else to blame. It's an easy way out and easy way to sort of make yourself feel better about it all, but it really doesn't achieve a whole lot. So, yeah.
Like you said, Josh, it's when you're thinking rationally in a rational mind, it's easy to put those thoughts to bed, but it's in those irrational moments where you're just so desperate for answers or looking for how it happened that some people's mind can go there. But I'm glad that you shone the light on, when you're thinking rationally, you know that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, and it's just, I guess it's just about, like, if you are feeling that way, you try and, like, I've been pretty open about that feeling with a lot of my mates, so they've been really good and, like, basically tell you to wake up for yourself, I guess. It's not the way you should be thinking about it. What's important is that you're there to support him, not looking back and being like, oh, what if I did this? I mean, it can't change anything now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And something I remember pretty clearly was the first time you and Chris came and saw me at rehab. At that stage, I had close to no movement. I could barely move my head. I was using chin-controlled wheelchair, no movement in my arms, like real early days. Tell me about the first time, well, what your reaction was to seeing me in that state, when I guess the last time you saw me was when I was running around at my 21st, you know, I guess able-bodied and normal for what you always knew me as, compared to, when you saw me.
Yeah, well, like, I guess it started, well, obviously you start from when we got to Melbourne and got to the rehab centre. It was like, I remember me and Chris were walking in and I was just dawdling, like trying to sort of put off seeing it, because I knew it was going to be confronting. I knew it was going to make me feel in a, you know, pretty, like, sad, like, I guess just sad. Like, I was going to be devastated. That's what sort of my mate was forced to live like now. But, I don't know, then Chris sort of gave me the hurry up, as he does. And we went in and it was just like, because at the time I don't think I even knew that you were in a chin-controlled chair. Like, we hadn't really spoken much at that point. And so it was just so confronting to see how little movement you really did have. Like, it just wasn't clicking to me that you know, what being a quadriplegic or an incomplete quad really meant.
Yeah.
until I think I didn't really get a full understanding of it until I saw you. And it was just a super confronting sort of experience. You walk in, last time you saw your mate, he could, we would spend half our time just wrestling and being stupid. And then get to a point where like you come in and then it's just almost like a shadow of what you used to be, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So how much did all of it honestly like really affect you mentally?
Yeah, I think, well, for the first like few months, definitely. Like I struggled with it. I didn't want to like really do much. I quit rugby, took a year off rugby because I was like I couldn't put myself in a situation where that sort of thing could happen. And I just obviously doing the replays of the moment, but then I think what sort of comforted me mentally was when we went and saw you and saw that like ultimately not much had changed, and you were being so resilient. So like, I guess me as your mate, what excuse do I have to be all down in the dumps when you weren't being down in the dumps? That was like mentally for me was really helpful. Was understanding how much you would like how you were taking it, I guess.
Yeah.
At any stage, did you seek professional help, or did you think about going and talking to someone about how you're feeling?
I think, there was one time we did get, Chris organised into, I can't remember what their actual role was, but someone involved with the fire brigade. So Chris's old man was a firefighter, and he got someone from the fire brigade to come and talk to us, and it was like obviously pretty like helpful, but it wasn't something that either me or Chris really felt that we needed to pursue, because I think we were sort of starting to, or me particularly, I was starting to sort of understand it for what it was, and I was coming to terms with it mentally. So I don't think I needed too much more help than what we already were getting as far as support from our mates and stuff.
It sounds like you and the boys were pretty open with each other in the aftermath of it, and you said that you were talking to them in those moments where you were almost assuming some of the blame of that night. How did the other boys deal with it? Were they going through similar thought processes and emotional processes as you were?
Well, like Chris is the only other bloke from Newcastle who was there. So like we mostly spoke to each other about it, and Chris is a much more sort of rational character than I am. I'm probably a bit more emotional, and so it was like, honestly, he was just really like strong and comfortable with it all. But he was probably my support more so than the other way around. He to be honest, didn't really. I don't think he really needed much. He was great to me though. Like, probably couldn't thank him enough for how supportive he was of me, and yeah.
Did any of the other boys, even though they weren't there, did they sort of have to struggle at all with it, or talking to you guys about it?
Like this was something that was, I guess, just typical bloke sort of mentality, or Australian bloke mentality, is that early on a lot of the boys just would sort of dance around it, weren't sure what you could talk about, and I'm sure you experienced that too, Nick. And like, people don't want to ask you questions and that sort of thing. But I think as time went on, and I mean, me and Chris would just, after we saw you particularly, would just start making some pretty unsavoury jokes about you, to be honest.
Expect nothing less.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, I was like, initially when we first saw you, it was kind of like, oh no, we we have to be nice to him now. And then sort of clicked for us that like we weren't nice to him before. Why are we being nice now?
Yeah, I would have felt weird if you were nice to me.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like didn't really work.
It'd been
Not
reverse
how our mate
discrimination.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when our like wider group of mates sort of saw that we were coming to terms with it and a bit more open with it, that they were definitely good support for us and asked questions, always wanted to know how you were going and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's something I reckon as well. That's been I've always said that I've been extremely lucky with the people I have around me through the whole thing. You know, people often say to me, you know, you've been so positive and so resilient. And I've always said that there's no way I could have been like that if it wasn't for the people I have around me. And the way that, yeah, I guess people just treat you normally and still give you shit the same way they would have before. It just makes it,
sure.
and there's that same balance between, you know, saying, "Are you all right? Do you need anything? Like, what are you doing?" And then same as telling you you're a dickhead in the next breath.
Yeah.
So that's what I reckon. It's still been that same balance, which has been good.
After you realise...
I think that's like...
Sorry, mate, you go.
I was just going to say it's something that like our group of mates did well, I think, is that, you know, if you completely change how you are to each other, it's you're going to feel like you'll feel ordinary because you'll feel like your mates. It's not the same mateship that you had, but yeah.
I still remember the first one in rehab. Mate Cal, he was down there, and Cal's got really bad eyesight. And I remember I was sitting in my room and it was raining outside, and I said something about it raining. And Cal's like, "What? How can you see that?" And I was like, "Us normal people, Cal, we can see that it's raining." And he goes, "Yeah, well, us normal people, Nick, we can walk outside and feel it." And that's what I was just like. Yep. I was like, "Yep, righto. Here this is a whole new world of comedy's just been opened up by this accident." So
When you started that story,
yeah.
I was hoping you were going to say that he walked into the room and sat down next to the wrong quadriplegic.
Mate, how good would that be?
Wouldn't put it past him.
So when you realised that Nick still had his witty banter and he could still handle a joke, what ways did it change your friendship? Was there things that, obviously there's going to be things that you used to do together that you can't now, but tell us a little bit about, in your eyes, how it changed your friendship.
Well, I guess like on a surface level, it's like the more practical things in like previously, especially when Nick was living in Newcastle, we'd just, you know, go to the pub for a beer, no thought required. You just go and do it. But now, obviously, when we want to see each other and do stuff, there's a lot more like planning goes into it, and we have to think about where we're going to go. We can't just sort of, as young blokes do, go where the night takes you. You have to sort of know where you're going as best as possible so that you can make sure that it's accessible and that sort of thing. But I guess like that's obviously something to consider, but I don't think it's ever been a barrier to us wanting to hang out is the main thing. Like, to be honest, we probably do cooler stuff now. Like if we hang out, we go to the cricket and we get these awesome seats because obviously you have to get in front of it early. But like whereas before we just, you know, go to the pub, watch footy or something. But yeah, so I guess that part of it's been new and different. But aside from that, I don't think our friendship has changed all that much. Like you were just saying about how it's opened up a whole new world of humour. Like now, if Nick annoys me, I just push him into the corner and take his hand off the controls. Or
you can finally beat me in a wrestle.
Yeah, I can beat Nick in a wrestle, and if I annoy him, he just, you know, rolls over my foot or something. So, like, I don't think, as far as actual mateship, I don't think it has changed all that much. I don't know what you think, Nick, but
yeah, well,
I see it.
No, I don't think it has. I reckon since the start, there's been, I mean, like I was just saying earlier, everyone's been good, but there's obviously those a few mates that, without meaning to, just do act a little bit different around you, or that I've always said from the start as well, there's only been a handful of people that I don't have to, because obviously I need a lot of help with things, I need to ask for a lot of help with different things. There's only sort of a handful of people that I've been able to just not think twice about asking for that help. And yeah, you're definitely one of them that I just, sometimes you second guess asking to hang out with people or approaching people to hang out because you don't feel like a burden on them, but you just know it's just more effort than what it was before. Just, rocking up, hanging out, you need help with things. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, definitely with us, it's still been that don't second guess trying to hang out or, need help eating. We go to the pub, help feed me. I need to go to the toilet, help empty my bag, do all those little things that, obviously you wouldn't have to do any of that stuff beforehand, but that's just those things that just take in your stride and, hasn't really changed anything.
Yeah, there's positives of that. I mean, before your accident, I couldn't be in a shower with you because you drink too quick, but now you drink at my speed.
Compared to me, he still drinks quick.
It's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously
There's no
haven't learnt my
consequence as
lesson.
well.
Yeah, well, I can't fall over now, so I'm sweet.
Yeah.
I think it's something as well that for the friends that act differently to you after it, it's for most people a bit of exposure therapy. The more time that you spend around it, the more normal it becomes. Like after 7 years now working in rehab with people with spinal cord injuries, I forget about the chair all the time. I reckon once a week I'll see someone walking down the street and I'll almost shout out to them thinking they're a client, and I'll remember, it can't be that person because they can't walk.
Unless they've stitched everyone up, it can't be.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for that joke to happen one day, but
Have you noticed any triggers or anything after since my accident that you'll see, like you were saying, for whether you're watching a game of footy and seeing tackles or anything like that triggers you a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd call it like a trigger, but I just hate seeing people dive headfirst into shallow pools. I hate it, and it's I think I've turned a little bit into a parent, and if I see one of my mates jumping into a pool, don't you do that? What are you doing? And then other stuff, on Instagram or whatever, you see those videos of people doing getting having hectic bike accidents or something.
Yeah,
I just can't watch that sort of stuff. No entertainment to me at all. It's just I don't know, that sort of thing. Obviously, is just I just can't stand it anymore. But I don't know that it triggers me and makes me sort of spiral or anything like that.
Just something more aware of now when you watch those, that it's not just funny, you can actually have something.
Yeah. It's realising that there's consequences to that sort of thing, which I don't know. I was pretty lucky, growing up in that. I was just never exposed to any sort of, I guess, tragedy in any way, shape, or form. Everything was sweet. So I just, I guess you get that typical young man invincibility. But no, I guess that's just completely changed now that you've had your accident. It just makes you a bit more aware.
I almost had a similar thing. I reckon that now every time I see the slightest awkward landing on someone's head or wrong tackle in rugby or anything, my first thought is, oh shit, has he had a spinal injury or something like that? Beforehand, and I don't even think I knew what a spinal injury was, or I never would have gone there. But
I mean, I thought it was reserved for people who were in high-speed car accidents, heavy machinery going wrong. But it just really can be such a, I guess, innocuous thing, jumping in a pool.
I think you hit the nail on the head before. Like as a young guy, you just don't associate the consequences with the risks that we take for fun. So statistically, the group that we see with the most spinal cord injuries is guys aged between 15 and 24. And I think, as Nick, you said before, like you called yourself a dickhead for doing what you did, but I could not count on all my fingers and toes the amount of things that I've done more risky than jumping into a pool with a bit of beer in my belly. So it's I think a hard thing to comprehend, but for most of the time it just comes down to luck or lack of luck.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, and that as well, like we've, me and you together, Josh, we've done some pretty stupid, risky stuff together, as I was saying, as all young males do. But since my accident, do you think it's changed your willingness to take risks or the way you approach those situations?
Yeah, I think so. Like, kind of, no matter how many sort of drinks you have under your belt or whatever, now I kind of weigh up the risks of what I'm about to do. It's like, could that be a life-changing mistake, or is it just going to hurt for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, just sort of weighing that sort of thing up. Now there's kind of things I just won't do. Like, won't jump off high things, or won't dive into pools head first, and that's saying something because or won't dive into shallow pools head first. And obviously that's saying something because we've been training in water polo for what, 15 years. Like, it's just, it's just different things like that. It definitely has an effect.
The little risk that I don't take these days is a little ironic because I still ride a motorbike and I was still playing rugby until an injury this year. But one thing I can't do is body surf with my arms by my side. Like, when you see people just like penguining down a wave at the beach, their arms by their side, that's my trigger.
Yeah.
I'm just picturing either running into someone or just spearing into the sand. But
yeah, for sure. That's the worst too. It's like, all you have to do is put your arms up and there'll be no problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What about the implications of Nick's injury has surprised you the most? You've said it yourself, and a lot of people, when they're thinking of a spinal cord injury, their lack of knowledge, all they think of is losing the ability to walk. What other effect of the injuries surprised you the most?
I think the one that sticks with me the most from when we were sort of first getting back to sort of hanging out and doing things post-accident was the temperature regulation.
Yeah.
So, like, we were at, I think, must have been the MCG. We were at the MCG for the Boxing Day test. And I remember it was like a stinking hot day. And we couldn't get home for some reason. Couldn't get back to the hotel. I can't remember if we couldn't find a taxi that could take you, Nick, or we were waiting on a carer to pick us up or something like that.
Yeah.
We stuck out the front of some pub, and Chris and Cal ran in to play the pokies, I think, while I stayed out the front with you, and just like having to, spray the water bottle on your face so that you could stay cool enough and that sort of thing. That was like something I just would never have even thought of. I think the other one would be the pressure injuries. You don't think of these little things. You think, oh, he's lost feeling below the waist or whatever. So pressure injuries wouldn't be a big issue, but obviously it doesn't matter if it doesn't hurt, still get infected and be a major issue.
Yeah. Nick, you've lost a bit of time and quality of life through pressure injuries.
Yeah, I've had a fair bit of problems with them just even before my accident. It's something Josh used to always give me shit about as well, that I had no ass. So
long back.
My hammies led straight into my back. No meat. I've had a fair bit of pressure injuries under my sit bones, so I've lost a fair bit of time having to be in bed because obviously it's just you can't be off it in your chair. So I've had to be in bed to let it heal. And because of that, I know there was one time where Josh was actually down around in Albury visiting, and I couldn't be up in my chair doing anything with him, and just sort of had to be laying in bed having a chat, which again, I know there's some people that when I was in that situation, I just didn't want to see him because, you don't want to be seen in that, just laying in bed. But he was one of the ones that just, don't think twice about it. He couldn't care less, just wants to see me, say, hey, we just still chat. He still gives me shit. Move on. But that's obviously hopefully getting better now. But yeah, like you said, one of those things I had no idea about them either beforehand.
Yeah.
And until I got one, then I was like, what the hell's this thing? But yeah, know all about them now.
Somewhat of an expert.
Add it to the list.
So apart from the, I suppose, increased risk aversion after Nick's accident, how else has it changed your approach to life? Has it changed your attitude or your perspective at all?
Yeah, I think I was actually listening to the podcast you guys did last week, and that was like he talked about resilience, and just like how you can, like, I just feel like I have no right to whinge about things when I guess it could be so much worse. I think it's definitely changed my attitude in that, like, I try not to whinge about things as much as I once might have. Like, for instance, I remember not long after Nick had his accident that I was walking home from work and I had to go up this ridiculous hill, and I was on the phone to Nick.
I was about to tell this story if you weren't going to.
Biggest stitch up. And I was on the phone to him and I'm walking up the hill and summer, I'm sweating, I'm disgusting, puffing. I go to him, oh, mate, this hill, it sucks. I couldn't think of anything worse. He's like, oh, yeah, what about if you couldn't walk up the hill? Brought me back down to earth real quick.
Yeah. So not only like not wanting to voice, like you said, you don't want to whinge about things you're going through, but does it also give you a bit of perspective that I suppose I call them first world problems aren't as big issues as some people are facing?
Oh, for sure. Like you're whinging about like, oh, I have to get up and go to work tomorrow, or have to, go to the gym and make sure I'm fit. It's like, well, really you should be, I guess, counting your blessings, because other people can't do that. It's like, it's a bit of a privilege really to be able to do that sort of thing, and whinging about the difficulties of that is feels pretty hollow when you've seen what other people are going through, and not just going through it, but also not, I don't know if I've ever heard Nick whinge about what happened to him. There's never been a why me, so like it definitely gives perspective to any issues that I might be having. It makes them pale in significance, I think.
Yeah. I think one thing, a lot of people have been asking me how I'm feeling about the podcast, and I'm saying I'm loving the opportunity to hopefully bring some people perspective, especially in the current times of COVID, of even just living in the country we do and having healthy functioning bodies, how lucky we are. But one thing I'm learning is that everyone has their own struggles, so it's not about as much when you're going through something that you're finding tough, not saying it because someone's going through something that's worse, but it's just about hopefully bringing the individual perspective of not feeling like they're going through as a significant issue. But at the end of the day, everyone's problems are relative to them, and if it's the hardest thing you've been through, then it's the hardest thing you've been through, and it's going to seem like a mountain to you. So
yeah, that's the thing. It's like you can't. You shouldn't say that other people's problems don't matter because there are worse things in the world. Like that's a stupid way to sort of see things, but it definitely makes you, I guess, take stock of what really matters and what you can, what a person can really get through if they're determined to do so.
Yeah. So you and Nick have played a fair bit of water polo together, and I'm assuming that you shared success in the pool. How does the feeling compare when you hear Nick telling you that he's able to do something now that he wasn't, or when you see him after a while of not seeing him and he's stronger and more able than he was before. How does that feeling compare to the success you had athletically?
Yeah, I mean, like, winning's pretty great. Winning stuff is awesome, but ultimately, like, I don't think there's anything I've done in any sport ever that you would that I would take over, seeing Nick make significant progress. Like, I don't think there's anything in, really in my whole life that I would put above hoping to see Nick make, strides towards a recovery of some description. So I guess seeing Nick be able to do things that he couldn't do initially after the accident is I don't know if there's something that brings you sort of more gratitude, I guess, that recovery can be made. Like, for instance, I remember when we first went down to visit Nick, he obviously was still in the chin-controlled chair. And then I think, like, about a year later, we're hanging out and you show us your new trick that you can turn your hand over.
Yeah.
Like, those sort of small wins, it sounds small, but it's like, like climbing a mountain. It's huge and, definitely brings me a lot of joy to see any recovery you can make.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you always tell me I'm just as good now at swimming as I was before, so that's all good.
Arguably a better swimmer.
And now he's got this handy glove with a stubby cooler sewn into it. He's lifted
Exactly.
schooners. Can you lift a pint to your mouth?
I'm practicing, don't worry.
So, hang on, how much of a schooner do you manage to get in your mouth?
Yeah.
Depends what time of the night it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Going all over your face.
They always used to make me, when I couldn't have a drink myself, they used to make me do a caca noise, like a bird noise, to tell them that I wanted a drink. Then they'd give me a drink. Just stupid things like that. That it's obviously it's a different way of mucking around together, but it still brings light to the situation, and they're still just idiots. That's good.
Yeah.
So, out of everything that's happened, what is the biggest lesson you think the whole situation has taught you?
I think it's about resilience. Like, it genuinely, like, seeing a mate go through that makes you think. And like the fact that I'll keep harping on that you've done it all basically with a smile on your face. There's not a whole lot of anger towards anyone. There's no resentment that it's you. It's just like, oh well, this is the way it is, and I'm gonna get this done as best I can. I think that's taught me that basically any trials you might face, that you can get through them, because it's possible if you've got the right mindset. So I think that's the biggest lesson that I've sort of taken on from the last 4.5 years.
Awesome.
That's a good one. That's one of the better ones we've heard.
That is good. Yep. Glad I could help. You're welcome.
Guru.
Shut up, idiot.
Oh, awesome. No, well, thanks for coming on, Josh. Really appreciate it. It was good to, like I said, we've spoken a bit about everything, but it was good to go in a little bit more depth about things and find out exactly sort of your perspective of it all from the outside of what I've dealt with. And thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been good.
Yeah, cheers, mate. It's a new perspective. So we've had partners on and children on whose parents have had disabilities, but I think it's a really important one to shine some light on is the friendships that are affected by disability, because as yourself and Nick have stated, some people don't really know how to act around a person after an injury or development of a disability, and hopefully this shows that the friendship doesn't have to change just because it is limited physically or depending on what disability is, but the friendships can push on. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you. Thanks,
Next week we have on guest Millie Boyle. For those who don't know Millie Millie's 23 years old and currently plays for the Brisbane Broncos in the women's NRL. She also played competitive rugby union before. Millie works and volunteers with young people with disabilities, as well as having a sassy 19-year-old sister, Hannah, who has Down syndrome. So Millie's coming on next to share her experiences from both her family and work perspectives, and we're looking forward to hearing her story.
Yep, definitely looking forward to getting Millie on. And Beyond Blue have given us the green light to offer their support. So if any of our podcasts bring up negative emotions and you need support, please contact Beyond Blue on 1300 224 636 or go online to beyondblue.org.au and navigate the website to their online chat. Check in on each other and remember, it ain't weak to speak.
Look us up on the socials, guys. The Unaffected Podcast on Facebook, or look us up on Instagram via the Unaffected_podcast, where you'll find links also to our YouTube and TikToks. You can also reach out via email on theunaffectedpod@gmail.com. So hit us up via any of those links with feedback or questions for guests who've already been on, or for Millie coming up, and we will pass that on and get that information back to you.
And continue to spread the word about this, please, guys. Keep getting it out there. We're getting some good feedback, and like we said, it's good people being able to get things off their chest and talk about it, and hopefully educate some people out there. So yeah, keep spreading the word, and hope you enjoyed, and see you back next time.
Cheers, guys.